Hello and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to learn about similes. Similes are a type of idiom or idiomatic expression which compare two things. They always include the word as or like. Similes are made by transferring the characteristics of one thing to another. However, there are exceptions because similes can be used differently in different contexts. Their meaning is largely determined by the way they are used and understood and not by any rules. Okay, so let's see some examples. Karim is as thin as a rake. To be as thin as a rake means to be very thin. So this simile is made by giving the characteristics of a rake to a person, to Karim. If you don't know what's a rake, rake is an agricultural tool which has a thin, long handle. Imagine the context when this simile was first used. A farmer might have been raking their land in rural England, and he might have come across someone very thin and said, "Hey, you're as thin as my rake." Okay, so her skin is as smooth as silk. To be as smooth as silk means to be very smooth, right? Karen is as bright as a button. Now, bright here does not mean bright in the literal sense. It does not mean Karen has a bright, shiny face. Bright has a metaphorical meaning here, which means clever, sharp. So Karen is very clever, Karen is very sharp. I'm as fresh as a daisy. To be as fresh as a daisy means to be very fresh. If you have a very good night's sleep and in the morning you feel as fresh as a daisy. Akram drives like a maniac. To do something like a maniac means to do it badly. To drive like a maniac means to drive fast, drive badly. As clear as crystal. To be as clear as crystal means to be very clear. So you can say, although there was much noise in the room, but I heard every word as clear as crystal. As poor as a church mouse. As poor as a church mouse means to be very poor. Although I may look like as poor as a church mouse, but in fact, I'm very rich, which is, I think, true. As silent as the grave. To be as silent as the grave means to be very silent. So during lockdown, bazaars were as silent as the grave. As dry as a bone, which means very dry. So my mouth is as dry as a bone, which means I'm very thirsty. My mouth is very dry. Here are some important things which you need to learn about similes. Number one, similes should be learned as whole phrases. It's not normally possible to change the individual words of a simile. For example, you cannot say as thin as a stick or as thin as a pole. It's only as thin as a rake. The order of words of a simile cannot be changed as well. For example, you cannot say white and black, right? It's always black and white. Sometimes, however, an individual word of a simile can be changed, but with that, the meaning often changes as well. For example, your mouth can be as dry as a bone, which means extremely dry, but my lecture can be as dry as dust, which means very boring. You should also be careful in the use of similes, because similes can be used in humorous or sarcastic ways. For example, my biology teacher explained to me as clear as crystal, but my physics teacher was as clear as mud. To be as clear as crystal means to be very clear, but as clear as mud means not clear at all, right? So it's used in a sarcastic way. Last thing, similes should be written in full in writing. However, in speaking, you can omit the first as. So instead of saying as bright as a button, you can say Karim is bright as a button. Many similes are used in everyday conversations and informal situations. Check out these email conversations and think about the possible meaning of the similes used. That's it for today's lesson. What other similes do you know, and what's your favorite simile? Please let us know in the comments. If you have a question or a suggestion, please drop that down in the comments as well. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll be with you with the next lesson.